Joining us right now is former Assistant U.S. Attorney in the L.A. area, David Katz. And David, you worked with Justice Ginsburg, is that right?
Yeah, well, let me just clarify that. I was a finalist to be her law clerk, and I met her and had a wonderful session with her when she was still teaching at Columbia University Law School in New York City. But somebody else ended up getting the clerkship. But then I got a clerkship down in Washington, D.C. with a judge there, and she came on the bench and was on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals before she was on the Supreme Court. And my judge was very friendly with her, so we were back and forth between chambers, and I got to know her personally in that sense, but I was not her law clerk. I just barely missed that. She chose someone else to be her clerk on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals.
Well, everyone's allowed to make one poor decision. We'll give her this one. David, tell me a little bit about then, as you said, you got to know her and you got to work with her, but obviously you got to see sort of what she was like in a sense that most of us never got to see. Can you sort of relay some of that experience?
She was a wonderful person. She was warm. You know, sometimes when you hear about these famous people and then you hear stories, she wasn't like that at all. She was a little shy. People have talked about that. They've also talked about that she was a performer. In other words, in a normal conversation, she might be a little shy and, let the other person talk more. But when it came to performing, when she spoke for the U.S. Supreme Court, you know, she was a famous advocate in front of the Supreme Court. And you can't be a totally shy, introverted person and argue and win in the Supreme Court. She had argued she argued 6 famous cases in the United States Supreme Court in the 70s. She won 5 of them. And part of her genius was to show the need for equal protection without gender bias. And she often picked a male as the plaintiff and took her case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court because the fact that a male was being discriminated against in a certain way showed the fallacy, the idiocy of the sex discrimination. Of course, she also had cases where a female was the plaintiff, and she basically established the principle as an advocate in the U.S. Supreme Court that equal protection doesn't just apply to minorities, and in particular to African Americans, which is sort of the legacy of Thurgood Marshall. But she showed that it applied at a slightly different level of scrutiny, but that analysis of equal protection applied to women. It also applied to men. It applied without regard to gender. And of course, that was her genius, was to get those cases to the Supreme Court. And then when she was on the Supreme Court, she had an illustrious career there. But as Toobin said, she would have been a giant of the law if she'd only been a legal theorist, if she'd only been a successful Supreme Court advocate, because part of her talent was to figure out what cases were the right vehicles to establish principles in the Supreme Court in the same way Thurgood Marshall had done that as an advocate for the NAACP back in the day.
And so in that regard, it's almost like the chess match that attorneys play, right? Where they're trying to figure out, okay, not only do I have to have the right legal argument here, not only do I have to have all of my ducks in a row, but how do I present this in a manner that makes it impossible to ignore my argument? That's sort of where she really was able to show that she thought beyond sort of that two-dimensional chessboard. She was able to think in that third dimension.
It took a tremendous amount of diligence and discipline to get the right cases to the Supreme Court and through the appellate courts to that level. And she had a fairly, in the 70s, it was not that receptive a court. You know, this was not the old Warren Court. This was the Burger Court. Many of the justices had been appointed by Nixon. And so she had an uphill battle, and she battled it. As I said, she won 5 of the 6 cases she argued to the U.S. Supreme Court. And then, of course, she had a famous relationship with Justice O'Connor, who was the first woman on the U.S. Supreme Court. She's, of course, still alive today, but she stepped down from the U.S. Supreme Court. In my judgment, it's too bad that she did. She was replaced by Alito, and I agreed with O'Connor's decisions a lot more than I've tended to agree with Alito. But she stepped down, and of course, RBG was there, you know, right until today. And she said that what she really hopes is that the new president, whoever wins in November, will appoint her replacement. But it's already started. The political squabbling, as you know, has already started between McConnell, the leader of the Senate, saying there will be a vote on the Senate floor on a new nominee, and Biden saying that's ridiculous. McConnell's position back in 2016 was first we elect the president when you get this close to the election, and then that president, whoever it is, picks the Supreme Court justice, and then you have the Senate floor and you have the Senate hearings on the new nominee. But this is going to be a battle royale.
It's going to get – I have a feeling this is going to get ugly. And I have a feeling that all of a sudden Mitch McConnell is about to get a lot of unwanted attention. Is that a fair assessment when we say the focus is suddenly on Mitch McConnell?
Yeah. Absolutely, Chris, because he's already, in my opinion, first of all, there should be a few days to just mourn her. She was really a giant of the law. I think you were saying before that, her decisions will be around for the rest of the nation. When you hear about Justice Marshall decided this, or the Supreme Court decided that in the 1870s or 1880s, they'll talk in 100 or 200 years about some of her decisions, both the ones that she won as an advocate before the Supreme Court and ones that she decided on the Supreme Court, and, of course, some of her dissents, some of her four-person dissents. The Supreme Court split 5-4, and it's usually her who's writing decisions for the four. Sometimes other justices do. There's also Sotomayor, Kagan, and Breyer. But, the decisions that the dissents that she's made on behalf of the four may yet become the majority opinion, in the fullness of time.
Sure. And I guess in that
regard, what I was saying about the senators, there are senators who are on record having already said, like the head of the Judiciary Committee, McConnell is the majority leader in the Senate, but there's a Judiciary Committee that decides on this, and that's Lindsey Graham. And Lindsey Graham said, a Republican, in 2018, that he would not fill a spot on the Supreme Court close to the election. And my goodness, we're 45, 46 days away from the election. This really would be precipitate, right, to try to get somebody through and confirmed. And, all the things that you hear, some people say Senator Cruz. Think about that. They try to push Cruz through. And people say, well, he's a very unpopular senator. They might decide, get him out of the Senate and put him on the Supreme Court. So God knows what is about to happen. But McConnell is really going to try to make something dramatic happen. And we hope that there'll be some moderation. We hope that senators like Collins and Murkowski will say, wait a second, we're moving a little bit too fast. And as I said, Lindsey Graham has already said that in this situation he would not push somebody ahead. But, is it raw politics? Does he get intimidated by Trump? He's on the ballot himself, Graham. He's in a close race. He said he's a man of principle, but let's see if he caves.
And these are the unknown questions, David, and I was going to bring that same thing up. He's in a tight race in South Carolina, tighter than he's ever faced, and you have to believe that if he's going to be looking for that undecided vote, I'm going to guess that he caves to the will of Trump McConnell. That's my gut on that one. I don't think that he's going to say, well, let's hold off because I want some of these independents that are swinging to the left. I want to bring them back over. I get the feeling he's going to say, nope, I gotta walk lockstep and make sure the Republicans know I'm in it for them. It's just my gut on that one. And with Collins in Maine, she's in a tight race.
Chris, it may not be a profile in courage. It may be an example of political expediency, but let's hope not.
Yeah, I'm with you. David Katz, former assistant U.S. attorney in Los Angeles area. And David, always a pleasure speaking with you. And thank you so much for reflecting on the life and the times that you spent with Justice Ginsburg as we celebrate her life tonight. David, always good. Thank you so much, friend.
It's great to speak with you, Chris, and the nation has really lost the giant. It's a time for mourning.
Absolutely. That's an understatement. Absolutely.